DJs and a lot of producers went online streaming, which is another skill set now. And it's another way for young producers, young DJs to brand themselves, to get themselves out there, create their own radio stations. And we're going to allow this brother here to get into his presentation on broadcasting. B Scudder, Brent Scudder, B Scudder 313 FM. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess one thing I wanted to start with, I'm going to kind of go, I guess, in reverse order than most people kind of present, but just to kind of get a feel of the room. Does anyone have anything specific that they want to learn or know about live streaming?
Layering for one, transition how you put the different lower thirds.
Okay, so layering is I'll repeat the question because it probably didn't get picked up by the mic. Layering graphics was one of them, and then also lower thirds, which lower thirds are a type of graphic. You'll see it a lot on news broadcasts down at the bottom corner where it'll say the newscaster's name, or maybe you might have seen it on some DJ streams where they'll have the DJ's name and then they'll have their website or their Instagram or something like that. Just a way of identifying the person that's presenting. As far as setting those up, I'm curious right now, are all three of these visible on the stream, at the same time? Okay. So I guess the first thing we can talk about is making graphics for your stream. The easiest way to go about making graphics is no matter which program you're using. I'm most familiar with OBS. It's one that I recommend because it's very professional and it's also free. There's some other ones out there that are just as professional, but they cost money. So this one is it's a good one to start with and learn, but you can keep using it even after you get past that learning period. But one of the most important things you want to keep in mind with graphics is you want to make sure that when you set them up, you're setting them at the same resolution as the broadcast. You don't have to stretch them or shrink them, because that's going to decrease the quality of either the text or the graphic or lower thirds. So the first thing that you want to figure out is, what resolution am I streaming at? I typically will not broadcast at 4K. There's a couple reasons behind that. I have the ability to, but I will rather run at 1080p or 720p. It's totally a preference thing, but the reasoning that I don't broadcast at 4K is because I live out in the middle of nowhere, and I have really slow internet. And so anyone else out there in the world that has slow internet, I feel for them. And I'm sure it's really terrible when you're trying to watch your favorite DJ and every 5 seconds you get the little spinning buffering wheel. So even though 4K looks great, I like to kind of cap myself at 1080 or 720p just to make sure that there's no streaming issues. Now, however, there are certain platforms that if you have the upload bandwidth to put out a 4K stream, I think Mixcloud, I actually use one called slipmat.io. They will, kind of like YouTube, how it has an auto setting where the video might be in 4K, but you can pick to watch it in 1080, 720, 360, or whatever, depending on your internet connection. So some of them you can put out a 4K stream, and then for your listeners, it will automatically degrade the quality depending on their connection. But if you're running your own server, which we are for 313.fm, I just keep it at 720, so that way it's accessible to everyone. Everyone can watch it. But with that being said, going back to graphics, when you're making your graphics, you want to make sure that you're making them in the same resolution that you're putting out your stream, so you're not having to stretch them or shrink them for the stream. Now, like Jungle asked with lower thirds, what I like to do is I will first in Photoshop, or you could use, you could even do it in Microsoft Paint. It's free. Paint.net is another one that's really good for making graphics because unlike Microsoft Paint and like Photoshop, it'll allow you to work in layers. Just, I guess, a better program than MS Paint that's also free. But I'm familiar with Photoshop. It's what I use, but by no means do you have to go out and spend money on Photoshop to be able to make quality graphics for your streams. So what I have on my laptop here is an example of a graphic that we use for my stream on my radio broadcast. I have slipmat.io in the top corner, which is just the video streaming service that we use. Speakerbox, which is the location that we stream from. And then the bottom half in the bottom left corner is the lower thirds that Jungle was talking about. This is an older one. It was when I had Cafe Con Leche, which is two friends of mine that DJ. Planet Funk is the name of the radio show that I run, and then 313.fm is the station that we're on. So what I did here is I set up a transparent image at 720p, so the same resolution that we broadcast at. And sorry, I'm losing my track of thought here. What this will allow you to do is, because it's at the same resolution that you're broadcasting in, all of these graphics that you set up are going to line up in those exact spots on the broadcast. Now, there is a way that you can kind of cheat, and you can see how everything's going to line up on your camera, which is another good thing to do, especially if you are with graphics, pictures, words. You want to make sure that they're clear, that people can see them. I just put my camera on my laptop on as an example. But one thing you can do, you see, like, obviously that top left corner is very dark. So I wouldn't want to use a black font there. Most of the background actually is dark. Your room might be different, but one thing that I will do whenever I'm making graphics for a stream, if I'm in a new location, the location that we're at, usually the camera angles never change. I don't have to worry about colors clashing or anything. But this is a good example because it's a very dark room. Obviously, that top left corner, I wouldn't want to use black text. So what I can do is I can take a screenshot of that. And this, I'm going to be stretching it because I am not doing it at full screen. But I could actually take this and cut out the image of my, actually I would have wanted to turn off those graphics first so I don't get those in there. So I'm going to back up. It's okay, we're doing this live. So I'm going to get rid of that and not have those graphics. There we go. So I'll take a screenshot, just print screen of it. I'll go back to my screen here, and I can put that screenshot of what the camera is going to see behind everything. And I will just cut that out and reopen it. And then when I paste it in, I'll be able to see kind of an example of what the camera is going to see versus how my versus how my graphics are going to show up. Oh wait, I guess I have to close it out first. Never mind. So again, like I said, I'm gonna have to stretch this because I didn't take it at the right resolution, but I can at least do this. And then when I move it behind everything, I can see how it will look on my stream. And you can see, you can read everything. I don't have any black text up in the corner there or anything. So that's a good way when you're making your graphics for your stream to make sure that everything's going to be clear. Just take a screenshot of what your camera sees, put it behind your graphics, and then make sure that you don't have black text in an area that's going to be dark the whole time, because then no one's ever going to be able to read it. So now going back to OBS, I'll turn those back on here. We'll go back into studio mode. Another thing that I wanted to mention with lower thirds is if you make all of your graphics the same, you can actually this is kind of like a cheat mode here. I have, actually, I feel bad because I'm just kind of talking about OBS. I'm not sure how much everyone knows about the software. I guess I should kind of give a little explanation. Here in the left are what are called scenes. Those would be like your different cameras. I have like a scene here for like intro video. So if I play that, it's my show's intro video. I have another one for like a stream starting logo, which will do a countdown. I'm just not running the app for it right now. So normally before the stream starts, it'll do a countdown, 10 minutes, then we go live. But that's what this left section is just your different camera angles, your different graphics, and then each of those scenes can have multiple sources. So, for example, right now, the scene I'm on is just called laptop camera because it's the camera on my laptop. Inside each scene, you can have multiple sources. So in this scene, I have one source, which is laptop cam, which that source is just the camera. I can hide it, I can bring it back. That's all it is the camera. Now I have a couple other sources here, which are guest 1, guest 2, guest 3. I have guest 5. I don't have a guest 4. I guess I deleted that one. But what those are the different guests that are playing on the show. Now, if anyone's familiar with image editing software, such as Photoshop or even Paint.net that I mentioned earlier, the way that OBS treats the sources is layers, kind of like Photoshop and stuff. So if I have these guests here, this guest 5 is going to be the top layer. So even if I turn on guest 1, if I go to guest 5 and I turn that on, because it's over it, it's going to be what's covering that the guest 1. So what you can do is a way to, I guess, kind of cheat without having to constantly switch, is you can layer, say if you were doing a talk show or you were doing a radio show with different guest DJs, is you can just set up all your lower thirds, all your graphics, especially if they completely match. So if you're looking at it, it's not going to bleed through the other one. It's just it literally covers the one behind it. Is you can, whenever you go to, say, the first guest is myself and my friend Woodward, but then the next guest is coming on, what we can do is just unhide that layer, and you see in the left window there how it's switching. And then when we want it to go live, we can just switch it to the camera that's live. Now, I guess I missed one point when I was talking about the making the graphics, is When you make these, I had mentioned you want to make them at the same resolution that you're broadcasting in. It's important that when you're trying to make a graphics this style, where you want it to, where you're going to use it as an image over your video, it's important that you make the background transparent. If people are familiar with file extensions like JPEG, PNG, bitmap, PNG is the easiest one to work with. JPEG does not allow transparency at all. So if you saved this lower thirds that I made with like the slip mat, speaker box, name, 313.fm logo, if you saved it as a JPEG, the whole background would be white and it would completely cover the video that you're trying to show through it. So when you're saving, PNG is usually the easiest one. There are other formats that allow transparency, but PNG is the smallest, easiest one to work with. So just if you're trying to make graphics and you go through and you make it, you know, the right size and everything, and then you go to open it in OBS and all you see is a white background, that's probably why, because you might have saved it as a regular JPEG versus a PNG or another file that supports transparency. Oh, okay. So there's a question. I'm not just not talking for the people that are tuned in online.
So the first part question, when you make the graphics, you know, like when you do broadcasting, there's this such thing as safe zones. So like if you make it and you put them in place, does it have to sit in a certain area? Because what you see in your OBS screen, is that exactly, does it show differently when somebody's watching on their phone?
So
Does it show differently if you're on the laptop? Does it show differently on the TV?
So the question was, when making your graphics, is there like certain, like kind of like a safe zone where what's broadcasting on OBS, is that going to be different on someone else's screen? Say if they're watching on a laptop, if they're watching on a TV, if they're watching on a computer, their phone, whatever. What OBS puts out should be exactly what everyone's seeing, as long as they're not like shrinking their window size or anything. I will sometimes bring my graphics in a little bit. If you're the only one where it really kind of runs into problems is televisions. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like overscan and underscan. Some older TVs don't work too well. If you're plugged into, say, a laptop, it'll kind of expand beyond the borders. Newer TVs have the technology where you can shrink that in. But yes, if you do have, you know, if your audience is watching on, say, TVs from their laptops plugged in, that it might be one thing that you want to consider. But then again, if you're moving them in, you're also kind of cutting out more of your video. So that would be going back to, like I said, if you take a screenshot of what your camera sees, not only can you use that as a way to make sure that the colors are all going to work okay, that you're not putting black text over a dark area, but also so you can make sure that your text isn't covering something important. So say, for example, broadcasting a DJ set, you probably wouldn't want your text or your graphics covering the turntables, the mixer, because that's what people want to look at when they're watching this. So if you do take that screenshot, open that in Photoshop, then you can build your graphics around what your camera sees, rather than make the graphics, open up OBS, and then you're going, oh shoot, it's covering the turntables. Now I got to go back and remake it. Just take a screenshot of what your camera sees, open it in Photoshop, Paint.net, whatever you use, and then build your graphics around it.
The second part of the question was, with the lower thirds, some people may like to use animated, like motion graphic lower thirds. Does that affect the streaming or the bit rate or something, or the rate of speed? You know, some have that motion.
Mm-hmm. So the question was for like motion lower thirds, if that would affect anything to do with like bit rate and stuff. Not really, because I mean you're already putting out the video. That's gonna, you know, that's it, the lower thirds are just a graphic. It's not really gonna affect What's going to affect the speed is what resolution and what audio bit rate you're putting the stream out as. So that's where I was saying, like, if I wanted to broadcast everything in I don't know, like wave format audio as opposed to just 320 MP3, and I wanted to put out a 4K video stream, it's probably going to look great, but like I said, for people like me that live out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to get a lot of buffering. So that's why I tend to just cap it at 1080 or 720p. Oh, we have another question. Yes. How many 45s do I own? I can actually give you an exact answer. I can give you an exact answer because I have it on Discogs, but I do know it is over. It's like over 1,200 right now. That's, yeah. Well, I only started collecting like a couple years ago, so it's pretty good for. I'm nowhere near Desi status. I'm nowhere near Desi status. He probably has 50,000 plus. Actually, now that we have more people here, because I wanted to kind of start off the presentation with, is there anything that people want to know specifically about streaming? I'm getting a lot of blank stares, so I'm going to go more into the notes here. Now, another thing that I wanted to touch on is for the in OBS they have this mode which is called studio mode. I don't know if you can put the screen share back on. Okay, cool, thank you. So normally when you open OBS, you're just going to get what your camera's seeing here. They have a feature called studio mode. It might be called something else in other programs, but it's really helpful. Right now it's just showing what both of them are showing, but normally right here, program on the right is what is being broadcast out to the audience. On the left in preview is where you can kind of pre-set up things. So say, like I said, when you're switching DJs, right now I have Ishaku played a couple weeks ago on the radio show, but if that was the camera that was live on the DJ, obviously it's focusing on me because we don't have a live DJ here. But what I could do, instead of them watching me because if I was doing it without studio mode, they would see me going through and clicking through all these names trying to find, okay, who's the next DJ that's on? And you don't want to have people looking at that, while you're streaming. You want to make it look professional, smooth transition. So the studio mode, what it allows you to do is it allows you to kind of pre-set up things. So like I said, the one on the right is what's live. So if, say the next guest DJ was, let's go with Julian Abel. So the next DJ is Julian Abel. I'm going to find him on there. And then when he goes on, I can easily make the transition to him being the live DJ. So that's one good thing about the studio mode. Another thing, if you're working with multiple cameras, is you can use the studio mode also as a preview for those other cameras that you have set up. Like here, they have 3 different cameras on me. Let's say if you're broadcasting someone and they step out of view of one of the cameras, you obviously wouldn't want to go live to that camera because it's not even going to be looking at them. So as you're broadcasting, while you're choosing which camera you want to go to next, you can look in that preview one and make sure that it's focused on your subject, or even something as funny as like you make sure they're not picking their nose on that camera or something. Now, one other thing, because I know we got kind of a late start, I wanted to talk about our, especially for people that are just getting started in live streaming. You might look at some professional setups, like this guy over here. He has this really, really nice rolling board, and I'm sure it probably costs a few $1,000s. Getting started, you don't necessarily need to spend that kind of money to get into it. I actually, for switching my video, I use a cheap little $200 controller, but there's even cheaper alternatives than that, which can work great. One thing that I always tell people, especially like if they don't have the money for cameras, here they're using GoPros and like a regular video camera. Webcams work great, but even if you don't have webcams, if you don't have the money for them, or you're just thinking, I don't want to spend the money yet, and I just want to kind of experience it, is they have apps for both iOS and Android, which will basically, you have to be on the same network that your computer is connected to. It runs a server app on your computer, and then you run this app on your phone, and it will basically trick your computer into thinking that the camera on your phone is a webcam. So if you have your regular phone and then maybe you have an old iPhone 6 laying around that still has a camera on it, well, you hang both of those phones up and now you have two camera angles for free. So it's kind of cool that there are these alternatives that you can use without even spending any money just to get into it. And, the cameras on some of these phones are better than, some of the Logitech webcams that are kind of the standard. So it's actually, you might actually be at an advantage using, your brand new Galaxy S22 or whatever. But with that being said, it's also a cool feature for streaming to add in. I run 5 cameras during my setup, but I also can use my phone. And where that comes in handy is, say we're broadcasting from a club. Well, normally the cameras are going to be set up on the DJ. Maybe I'll have one pointed into the crowd, but I can then, because this is basically a wireless camera, I can now go into the crowd and you have a point of view of the dance floor that I can just switch to whenever I want. So unfortunately I don't know the iPhone ones because I don't use iPhone, but the one that I use is called Droid Cam OBS, and it's for Android. But yeah, it's I think they have like a free trial, and then after that it's only like a $5 app or something like that. And you just download this free program to your computer. It acts as a server to find your phone, and now you can live stream using your phone as a camera, but also going through the laptop, so you can still it's not just like going on Facebook Live where you're limited to your phone's microphone and not being able to add graphics. You can still use your phone as just the camera, but then you're having direct audio input, you're having your graphics and everything. So going from what would just be a cheap Facebook Live, well, now you got like a full studio, but your phone is literally just your camera. One more question? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so just kind of just, I guess, to end it off, but like, what are some of the best streaming services that you would use with OBS for, from a user's experience?
Like to stream to? So I know, because this is music focused, the biggest player right now is probably, because I know that's what we're broadcasting right now, is Mixcloud, I believe. Mixcloud is a good one. It's a paid service. So maybe if you want to mess around with a free one to make sure that's something you're into, then you can go to Mixcloud. The nice thing about Mixcloud, and the reason why I push for people to broadcast on these platforms like Mixcloud and all the other music related ones, are because this is only going back a couple of years. People were going live DJing on Facebook Live, and the streams would get shut down because Facebook isn't paying the copyrights for the music to be broadcast. Even people that were going Facebook Live and they weren't DJing, but there was music playing in the background of the store. Some of those would get shut down because the grocery store they're in is playing Prince, and that's copyrighted music, so it just cuts your stream off. Mixcloud pays royalties for that. The one that I use, like I mentioned up in the top corner of the laptop stream, is slipmat.io. I go with them because it's kind of like supporting the little guys. They're an independent company, but they're been around, I want to say maybe a year before Mixcloud got started. They're not as big, but it is another alternative, probably a cheaper alternative as well. Yeah.
Let's give it up for Brent.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, no, you ain't got to go nowhere. Oh, you straight. I'd like to thank the brother for his first presentation on OBS and broadcasting. Very informative, very in-depth, not just at a basic level, but actually learning how to use these techniques to make your presentation or your DJ broadcast look more professional. I really thank you for coming out to do your presentation. We're about to go into the next break, and we got coming up next Mr. Michael Fotis of the Audio Rescue Team with Movement that's coming up this weekend.